Hello, this is Dr. Scott MacLean. In this video, we're going to be tightening some screws on two implant crowns. So we have to ask a few questions before we start a case like this. First off, are they cement or screw retained? To determine this, we look at the crowns themselves, and we can see that there's no visible access channels, so these crowns are indeed cement retained, which makes it a little bit more difficult. I'm not usually a cement retained fan, but they're still good crowns. So the goal is to salvage these two implant crowns, and let's have a look at how we'll do this. So to understand the cement retained system, we have to look at where the implants are, where the crowns are. So the crowns are shown in green here. They're cemented on abutments, usually titanium or gold abutments, and these are generally coming off of the implant. So we can see that the channels from the mesial distal position are going to be not too bad, but we don't know from a buccal lingual position. Now over top of the screws there'll be some Teflon or cotton, and then also some resin, and we have to drill this out to get to the loose screws. So this is not that difficult, but we have to know where to drill and to not damage the crown. So as we take our diamond drills and go through the crowns, we can access that resin, remove the resin, get into the sterile Teflon or cotton, and then salvage these crowns, put new screws in, and then tighten them back up. And so this is a great service for the patient. So we're going to open up our case in DTX Studio Implant and do some planning for this. So we'll take the 3D X-ray, which is from my OP3D scanner. You can see that there's a few implants in here, and so we're going to look at the focus is going to be on those two posterior implants, which are both loose. I thought they were originally together, but they're independent, and so we'll access them very similar on both. So first off, I'll take a model of the implant. You can see here I'm dragging the model over top of the X-ray, so I'm doing reverse planning. So taking this, position this in 3D, because I don't know from the other X-ray how far it goes to the buccal or to the lingual when I'm doing these type of cases. So I want to make sure that I'm using the X-rays to make a screw channel that's very thin, not damaging the implant. And so we'll position these two implant plans, and this will show us where the screw channels actually are. So as we flip this over, we can find the screw channels are pretty good. Now looking at the position of these implants, we know that we can convert this to a screw retained option. So it's going to be something that we have to do to get into these channels. So we don't want to just necessarily freehand it. We could, but let's try to find the angle of how we're going in. So having the implant models in position that were actually these type of implants, and I don't really use these implants, but you can see that we can use the software to position the implant from an angle, and so we can rotate around the implant and find the exact position of where the implant is relative to where it is on the model. And so this is the key, is we're transferring the information back from the X-ray into the STL model that's inside the software. So looking at this, we can see that the surgery type on this implant is only offered in more of a 2 millimeter guide. So we're going to switch back to a different implant system, and this way we can do a fully guided type of case. And using the trajectory of the implant, we're still able to then convert this into a larger cylinder. So we go fully guided, and now the STL file, which is stitched to the CBCT X-ray, the two of them are together. So anyone who's doing the planning will be able to help you with this if you haven't done this before. But now we have this ring, and the ring is going to be different than the 2 millimeter. So we'll be able to fit a diamond down inside of this ring and then cut our channel. So looking at the cross-sectional view, you can see this pale pink line, which is actually the STL file, and it's stitched to the CBCT x-ray. So as we move one, we can see it move on the other, and gives us the accurate position of where the new screw channel is going to be through the crown. So there they are. And we can see that the rings are now large enough that I'll be able to drill. Now they're superimposed inside of the crown at this point, so we have to bring them to the surface, and doing this we just use the depth button. We don't want to grab them and change the trajectory. We just use the depth to move these back. So as you move them back, you're moving them so they're going to be on top of the clinical crown, and you can see they turn white. And as they turn white, this means that they're not superimposed directly on the tooth itself. They're over top of it, which is important in order to get the resin from the template to be completely engulfing that cylinder. So it's a pretty cool way to reverse engineer. So rather than putting the implants in, we're finding out where the implants are and then finding the screw channel based on the position of the implant over the x-ray. So the two are superimposed on each other, and that's the key to having success here. So as we back them up, we're going to be able to just check this and make sure that they're lined up in a key position to do the access. So this is fantastic. Now we have a channel access guide. We know exactly where to drill on the crowns. So this gives us that buccal-lingual position that we can't get on a 2D x-ray. So these are going to be fantastic for getting the patient new crowns without having to do some other new abutments and getting into a lot of cost and expense. And so it's also a fun procedure to do. So we make the template, design it, and then we're going to print this template, and the print person is going to then cement in the rings. These rings will guide where we're going to do our final positioning of the access channels. So we're going to stay narrower than this, of course, but this gives us a guide to do that access and to get this into a key implant position. So we're going to put this in chlorhexidine in a Pyrex bowl. You get these at Walmart, sterilize the bowl, put the chlorhexidine in, and anything that goes into the mouth, we're putting it in chlorhexidine. So we're going to make sure that this is going to be positioned on top of the teeth. So as this goes in, we can see that it's referenced to the teeth. And then as we take our diamond drill, so I'm using 8850 KR diamond. You can use something different, but I like to have a red striped diamond in this case and keep the access very narrow. So doing so, we're getting the key position of the access and also the angulation of this too. So we can go in at just a millimeter, and then as we start to do this, we'll take out the guide. There's the loose crowns we can see there. So we want to get into that screw channel to loosen these up. So we'll take the diamond, go back in, use lots of water so we can get through the porcelain without chipping it, and making sure it stays cool. So we know that the angle is straight in, so it helps us to hold our drill in that position as well. So as we go in, we're going to drop into through the crown and into that resin chamber. So if the person before you's done a good job, they've put some resin in there, and then also some barrier like a cotton pellet, or now we're using Teflon. So we sterilize Teflon and put it inside. So that as we drill through, we want to get into that chamber and not damage the screw really, but we want to get in and pull out that barrier and get that precision access that we want. So as we drill in, the tip of the diamond's actually getting dull, so it makes it better so that we're not going to cause a problem, but we don't want to go too wide here because we want to keep this as though it's like a screw retain position, enough to get the screw out but not to butcher the crown, because then it'll start to make a chip. Because of course the functional cusp on the opposing arch hits right in this area if the occlusion's done properly, or if they're able to. And you can see as we take this out, we're just making it narrow chambers. And we can modify this a little bit better as we get this out of the mouth and have this in your hand, because we're going to take these off. So we're going after the Teflon or the cotton And here we're taking an Explorer, which I've bent the tip to make it more like a 11DT Endo Explorer. And so I'm going in, and there's the cotton in this one. So this one has been placed quite a while ago. And then we can also take the implant screwdriver, and if you're not getting in there quite a bit or easy, we can go in and push the cotton down and actually push it in and then go back in to try to take it out. So it's the reverse of what you think, but it makes it help to get it out. So we'll take the screw, back the screw out, and then take the crown off and then have a good look at it. We can do modifications in our hand. We can see the titanium abutment that's been placed inside of the cement retained crown, and so now we can get at that screw. So it's a nice little way to get in and do the procedure. You can see here as I get into the screw itself, then I'm able to make sure that the driver can get in, and I'll take a diamond and I'll use my loops and go in and modify this, but it makes it so it's a nice little access chamber. So we'll go after the second one, and you can see here that now the end of the diamond is actually smooth, so I'm not going to damage the screw at all trying to get it out. So this is actually a good driver, or I mean a good way to get it out, because the drill itself gets smooth over time, and it's not going to damage the screw underneath, which I think is a cool way that it's helping us here. So as we take this out, we'll take off the other implant crown, because we don't want implant crowns just being loose underneath the tissue, because this is a place where bacteria is going to pump. We don't want that. So I'll go in here and I'll take my Explorer, which I've pre-bent the tip, so I can get in and take out the barrier. Here it's going to be Teflon. So as I poke at this, you can push it all the way down, as I said, or you can just try to grab it like this. So as I get the tip, I'll flick it sideways and then hold it against the wall and then pull back, and there's the Teflon. So these two were put in at different times, I would think, because one person put Teflon, one put resin in, but probably done by the same person. And I would much rather have a screw retained option on a conical type of connection, and then try to keep the occlusion lingualized, so not too much occlusion on the buckle cusps. Have it more over the screw so we don't get that lateral force, because these are pretty wide implant crowns and we don't necessarily need that or want that. So we want to make sure that we're not having too much force off the screw channel, and especially on something that doesn't have full conical connection. So as we take this out, we can see that there's the cement barrier. There's no cement underneath, so good technique was used to cement these on. Sometimes you pull these off and the cement is everywhere underneath. The tissues look great, so this implant is servicing the tissues quite nicely, and so this is what we end up getting. So as we take this out, we can see that I'm able to perfect the channels, smooth them down, get them ready, and put new screws in and replace those. So it's always a good idea, because these have been bending. You can see that the interface between the zirconia and the titanium looks pretty good, and we'll go back and put them in. So we'll try to make these not so wide. They don't have to be as wide, but the problem is when we lose bone is that we lose bone from the buckle to the lingual. So you end up being in a little bit of a crossbite or end-to-end occlusion. So I'm going to take some chlorhexidine and dip a cotton pellet just to clean the area in the crown interface. So I'll take this and clean and just make it so that the area is going to be clean from a bacteria point. You know, it's not going to make a huge difference, but it makes some difference. So we just sterilize it. We're not using this in the chamber. We use Teflon there. So coming back, we'll put the crowns into position and place them in, and then we'll be placing the barrier, because we want that over top of the screw so cement's not getting in the screw, because if cement was in the screw, then I have to try to cut the end of the screw off and then reverse the screw back out, and that's not a fun procedure. So it's better if we all do the Teflon inside of the chamber, and then this way we're not going to have problems if it does come loose. Now these are, I think, 10 years old, the patient has said. I didn't do these crowns, so I'm not sure what happened to them, but it seems like the buckle was hitting a little bit too much in occlusion. And as we put this back into position, we can see that we're going to take a torque wrench, screw it back to the manufacturer's torque, and get this in the key position. So I carry different people's torque wrenches because I'm doing a lot of repair work now in my office. There's implants that are now, they've been around for 70 years now, so we're starting to have people come in with servicing needs, loose crowns, loose implants, and there's different kits you can buy. But look at how nice these screw channels are and how precise they are. So we'll take some sterile Teflon and we'll place this into the screw chamber and then put some resin in there. So the Teflon comes in and we stuff it in. So I'll put it in and then open my plier and use one side of the plier to push it inside. So if the implants are in place at the correct depth, there'll be more than enough space for the Teflon in there. But the shallower the implant gets positioned, then we have a problem with this. So you put this into depth and leave enough space for the resin. Now that it's screw retained, we're able to go in at any point and tighten the screws if they start to get loose, because sometimes it's just the first of many times it's going to get loose. That's what I've found when you have a crown that's happening like this. Typically I see this on gold abutments. Here we're using some Filtech resin, and we're going to put this in and use a posterior resin to allow us to get a nice dense material, because we want to be biting against the occlusal forces on this. And so as we put this resin in, you can take your PFI, smooth it out. I use this PFI that has a condensing end on it, and I'm not sure the number, but they're not very expensive, and you can get them at any type of hand instrument company, and pack it in and then use the PFI portion. And of course you can always use your finger at the end. And then I'll have the patient bite against this before I cure it. So they're going to bite and chew, and then I'll cure the resin. So because we're just putting in a very small amount, really. It's going to be thicker than it is wider usually, but this is shown in the model that I did at the start. So we will pack this in and then do the light cure, and then the procedure's over. But look how wide these implant crowns are. I would try to stay a little narrower. This is what Carl Misch used to preach, is to keep the table a little bit narrower, and the forces should be on the long axis of the screw channel. Otherwise you get a wiggling force, especially if you don't have a conical connection. And I do believe this one does, but I'm taking the buccal cusp and taking them down a little bit and kind of shaping them so that it will look nice and good. But on lateral working and non-working, we don't want those buccal cusps to be connecting. But when the bolus of food hits there, we know it's going to have some contact. So this has been a successful case, and this is Dr. Scott MacLean as we finish up. Thanks for stopping by, and hope you enjoyed this.